Welcome, golf fans, pursuers of knowledge in the almighty dollar. This is your golf guru bringing you the 2023 AT&T Byron Nelson. This is going to be my preview show, of course. I'm also going to include, we're going to go through all the player analysis. I'll give you my DFS picks, and we'll talk about the betting card so we can go through all that information. I've got a ton here for you. I've got the custom stat models. We'll dive into the weather coming up, the field, you name it, I'm going to cover it for you. And with all that said, thanks for stopping by. Give me about 60 minutes. Sounds better than an hour. Let's go talk a little golf. Okay, so let's recap the Wells Fargo Championship first. And of course, Wyndham Clark ended up pulling it out. And if you guys follow me on Twitter, you will know that, of course, on the show, I picked him and bet him at 60 to 1. And then Saturday night came around and Draftkings Sportsbook offered me, I'd say about 25 to 1 odds cash out on what I put in. Knowing what I know, and this is sometimes knowing when you know a little too much history, can cost you some money, where I decided to cash it out. And the reason why was a couple of things. So, of course, I remember when Wyndham had the 50-hole lead going into the Bermuda against a way lesser field and gave that up. And then he also did it the Honda 2019. He had the 54-hole lead. Wyndham Clark has never, of course, won on the PGA Tour. He never won on the Korn Ferry Tour. Honestly, I don't think last he won was when he was in college. So with that said, and having Xander 2 strokes behind him, and then knowing that the weather was coming up, and then that he went and shot on Saturday, like the round of his life, shooting 8 under at Quail Hollow, everything lined up for me to say Wyndham's going to blow this. And of course, if you watch the tournament, you would know after the first 9 holes, it looked like I made a good call. Xander took the lead by, I believe it was a stroke going into 10. And then Wyndham got some really nice breaks. Of course, he hit a couple drives into the tree, shot it right out in the middle of the fairway. I'm not taking nothing away from Wyndham. I think he ended up winning by 4 strokes. He putted lights out on the back 9, hit the ball great, and he deserves a win, and I'm happy for him. But of course, it stung a little bit. I've never cashed out an early, winner ticket. Usually I'll let it ride, but, it wasn't the greatest financial side for the Wells Fargo. It was okay, but it wasn't the greatest. And I kind of just felt like, what, money in hand. And I still don't have a huge issue with it, but considering that the books have been, I feel like, just taking us for a ride this year and loving these elevated designated events, because over and over we've had, 10 to 1 or less odds have been hitting, except, now we got Wyndham at 60 to 1. I believe Kitayama, I forgot, was at least, 100 to 1 or even maybe better. And off the top of my head, that's it. And then, of course, this tournament we're talking about, Cage Lee won last year at a pretty decent clip of odds. And I actually do like what we have from we'll talk about the betting side. I don't like the odds they're giving us, but I do like the opportunity that maybe a long shot could win, as probably you hear that come out of my mouth quite a bit. Moving along. And then, of course, Rory was all the talk and the favorite. Now, there was 2 sides to the Rory story. I picked him, but I picked him for you guys with the call out that I had to listen to hopefully some presser information. And he didn't do a full presser, but he did have a conversation on the course with one of the guys from the Golf Channel. Honestly, what I took away from that was, he took off the RBC Heritage because he was still feeling it from what happened at the Masters with a miscut. And literally what he came out and just kind of said is, I think I was focusing too much on golf. And of course, with the year of the LIV battle and everything he had going on, he just felt like he had to check out mental health, whatever you want to say. But really what I took away from it, the highest cliff notes, was I've been spending too much time worrying about golf, not family and other things. I need to go spend a little more time doing that. Now, I'm not saying that's what transpired to, how he did at the Wells Fargo, but it was pretty shocking that he literally made the cut on the number. And then, Saturday and Sunday, I think all of us, at least, me, was kind of waiting for at least that 5 to 6 under round. Just never happened. And of course, this was on Sunday on a par 5 where he had 3-4 footer and just blew it by. Now, I tweeted out that he did change back to his kind of mallet, the TaylorMade Rasa. I don't know if that's a Spider, Monza, whatever it is. I saw that. I guess he also changed out his wedges, which really did not work. I tweeted that out, that from 100 to 125, it was not good. If you want to look at some stats and I'll talk about some of the other guys that, I don't know, were kind of shocking probably from us on how they either did or missing the cut. But if you look at Rory, the irons were just trash. Out the tee, I don't feel like it was that bad. I mean, he hit the ball really long on some holes. He had huge advantages, just could not take advantage of them. And then you're going to see this around the green. He gained, but that's because of how many of the greens he was missing there. And so that's the way it always works. If you gain 7-8 strokes on approach, your around the green is not going to be high, or it could even be negative because the few times you are chipping, maybe you don't get it up and in or whatever. And then the putter, though, you got to take in that he made on Sunday, I think it was a 74-foot eagle putt, which really probably helped that little, strokes gain putting, but just not a good tournament. I think a lot of us felt, Cam Young played here last year, ended up in, I believe it was second. And it should have been a perfect fit for him, but the putter, if you got to watch him, and I played him in Showdown, so I watched him pretty closely, was a disaster. And you can see nothing really shined at all. You can say gain off the tee, almost gained a stroke, but that was about it. And we expect that. I mean, for him, he should be gaining 2 or 3 strokes off the tee with, I believe it's him and Rory and then everybody else. Jason Day, kind of another shocker, right? I said his last win on the PGA Tour was here at Quail Hollow in 2018. He also struggled with the irons around the green. Putter wasn't bad, just couldn't do enough, I guess, with the irons. Spieth, shot 7 over. And it really kind of hinged on, so if I remember correctly, I think on Thursday, he just had a blow-up hole. I think it was on 18. Yeah, it was on 18 because he was in the water a couple of times. And I think he was like 2 under going into that hole. Shot, I think, like 3 over on it. Lost all what he gained. And it feels like even when he went in on Friday that he just never could get the momentum back. But you can see he lost across the board. But it's an interesting conversation for this Byron Nelson that's coming up. Of course, he's one of the favorites with Scotty. My buddy Burns, he missed the cut. And not by much, by a stroke, but the irons weren't as sharp as what we've been seeing. And the putter, it was, of course, on Bermuda. So, you kind of hope a little more of that. I've always said, though, that this, I don't know if it's Tiff Eagle. I forgot what exactly the kind of Bermuda they put in here. But yes, they had it overseas with POA. But even before that, when you see that really kind of blotchy, grainy, there was some grain, but I don't feel like strong or true as a Bermuda that we see in Florida. Also, I guess what they stated was they're going to be ripping those greens out and putting in a new Bermuda grass. I believe that'll be taking place here shortly. Morikawa, this was no shock, was not on him at all. And, like I said, he's kind of becoming a one-trick pony, at least definitely, I don't know, since his crazy 2020 season, 2020-21, it's the same thing. Usually pretty good in the irons. The driver, he's getting misses both ways. Around the green, and the putter has just been disastrous. And then Taylor Montgomery, who's really kind of a 2-trick pony, right? He typically gains off the tee. He's got, really good length, and he's just an amazing putter. It's the iron, so he kind of stayed for him. So I just pulled out some of the guys that we expected to, definitely make the cut. And then, you got Rory and Cam Young who made the cut, but, just did absolutely nothing. So, okay, enough on that. And then if you are curious how the guys that did do top 10 or better, Wyndham Clark just lit it up with the irons and then gained a crazy amount. So typically when you see these guys first-time winner, you're going to have to do those kind of results, especially at Quail Hollow in a elevated event. Of course, Xander chasing still did amazing, but 4-stroke difference in total strokes gained, so a big show out there. Hatton had a lot of opportunities on Sunday, just couldn't do a whole lot either. I mean, I don't think it's on here, but Justin Thomas, I even threw a live bet in there at like 30-1 because, he had that March going on. I believe he was 4 under on, I think it was the tougher side. If you do it, the Green Mile, it is what it is, but I believe the first like 4 or 5 holes on Quail is maybe some of the tougher holes. And if you come out of the front 9 or 4 under, watch out. And so I bet him, I think, top 5. And then even, on the slimmest chance that somehow Xander and Wyndham fell way back, bet him 30-1 to win that thing. And then, of course, I don't think I got those bets in. And then away he went to shoot, I think, 4 or 5 over on the back. So that did not work out. And who else here? Harris English. Talk a lot about him. I've always kept a close eye. I've hit him, I believe it was at the Travelers. I don't know what his odds were back then, 50-1, 60-1 when he beat Kramer Hickok in that long playoff. But, when he won a Tournament of Champions, the guy can play golf. That's all there is to it. And, this is still what makes me nervous is that he typically would get the hooks and could cause, but he went nuts with the irons, did really well with the putter, and he's always been a pretty good putter, especially on Bermuda. Fleetwood for a while, right, when he led, I don't know, it was after day 1. Looked like he might also have a chance to get his first PGA victory. Adam Scott, his best finish of the year. Michael Kim, someone that I think we're all looking at the Byron Nelson. He is a local Texan and has been playing really good golf lately. And it's hard to understand that. Again, this is where if you cover golf and you are watching so much of it and you have a history with golf, that it's really hard to play or bet some of these guys in DFS. And Michael Kim, I think he won the John Deere. I don't remember what year now, but it's been a while. That's his only win, and then it's been a disaster since. But this is like 2023 is a year of resurgence. If you look at Ricky Fowler and Day, Michael Kim, I'm sure we could probably go through and find quite a few guys. You know, you can throw Wyndham Clark into there because honestly, Wyndham over his whole career has had, you know, two decent, you know, finishes, and other than that, hasn't really done a whole lot. Homa kind of struggled midway through, had a good, you know, decent Sunday, okay start, but really just never got it going. Corey Connors, Denny McCarthy had a really nice round. Case Lee, of course, didn't help us out any on the betting market. Now, I don't know where the books would have had him either way. If he would have missed the cut, would the books had better odds? But I mean, I think he came out at like 22 to 1, 25 to 1, something ridiculous. Now I get it, back-to-back winner. He won actually in a better field at the Byron Nelson than what we have upcoming. But come on, I can't bet Case Lee at 22 to 1. And then Sanjay M a solid round again. So I think that's enough with that. Let's move on and talk about the AT&T Byron Nelson. Of course, these guys are now heading back to Texas from, well, we call it the East Coast of the States, coming from Charlotte and going to McKinney, Texas, which is just north of Dallas. If you're curious, going to this beautiful course we know as TPC Craig Ranch, and I say that with a little bit of sarcasm. It's kind of just a blah course. I mean, it is what it is. It was built back in 2004. This tournament, for whatever reason, has just never had a stable kind of course. It's moved, Trinity Forest, there was a place before that. Typically, it lasts like 2 or 3 years, and then it feels like it's got to move on. One thing that's new this year, which I noticed, was they've changed it to a par 71 and removed a par 5. So I think my own personal feelings is that the tournament director and the superintendent or whatever got together and said, hey, you know, we're kind of tired of getting just boat race 25, 26 under at this course. We need to make it a little tougher, because there's two things that I noticed. They removed a par 5, which is number 12. We'll talk about that more. And so that, you know, from a yards perspective, brought it down just a hair. But technically, of course, now you're playing a 500-yard par 4, which is much tougher. And then the rough usually was just around 2 inches. I noticed what it's stating from the superintendents, that it's coming in almost at 3 inches. The fairways are Zoysia, and I've told you guys before, Zoysia grass, just, it's like hitting off the driving range mat. It is the greatest turf to play off of, to score well. So that didn't change. And then, of course, we got bent grass greens here. The player field, we got another full-size player field at 156, which I don't know how you guys did on your DFS from a lineups, but, you know, I had a couple 6-6s, but I felt like it was a little tougher when you got that full field to do that. But a lot of the guys also that we were, you know, that I picked, I think out of my 20-some picks, I think only like 3 or 4 missed a cut, but it was that perfect alignment, right? I think Jason Day blew up some of my lineups, like that kind of thing. But of course, T65 in ties, as we typically see. Historical cut line here. We got 2 years, of course, that this has been going on at this venue, and that's everything we're going to talk about. I don't care what they did at Trinity Forest or any past venues. So 4 under to 5 under. And of course, your 2-time back-to-back champion, Mr. K.H. Lee, shooting a 25 under the first year and then a 26 under, which it's just crazy. I mean, and why I say that is, again, if you watch golf a little bit, back in 2019, Sung Kang, who actually is a member of this venue and course, but came out and won the Byron Nelson, you know, looked amazing. Like the guy could do no wrong. It was going to be one of the up-and-coming, you know, like what we just saw Wyndham Clark. And then after he gets that win, the guy just is a disaster, and still a disaster. But someone that, you know, I always take a long shot on here, because I watched him win that tournament back in 2019, and the guy looked like an all-world beater. And then, you know, and then of course you put him on his home course, and you would think, hey, you put those two together and you should have something. But yeah, he's been really bad. So we got these huge greens again, and I feel like this has been almost 3 tournaments in a row. Felt the Mexican Open had huge greens, and then of course at Wells Fargo. So a lot of similarities are going to be, you know, in the kind of custom stat model, funny enough, and huge generous fairways. So I put this in anytime this is over 25, that's pretty generous fairways. I believe at Wells Fargo somewhere around like 27. So that gives you some kind of idea. You've got 4 water hazards, and then you got that long, Rolette Creek that goes through the whole course. So, technically water comes into play on 13, 14 holes, but it honestly, except maybe one hole that I can think of, actually you could get it in. Like you'd have to be an amateur or just hit a really, really bad golf shot to actually bring water into play on this course. It really doesn't affect. 10 meter, you got 11 and a half. So I don't know. That's fast, kind of medium fast. I don't think that's like, not lightning by any stretch. Also, from my understanding, the conditions here, they've had a pretty wet spring and a cold winter. So, I think the course is going to be a bit soft. I think I read somewhere that they had to do quite a bit of replacement of some turf around the greens and stuff like that due to the conditions of the winter. And then I was talking about course defense. I mean, really, the par threes, they have 3 of them that are over 200 yards. That's a bit. I mentioned the creek, but like I said, it doesn't really come. I mean, there's some trees, lining the fairway, but again, they're quite set off. Like you have to really get wayward to get in behind a tree. And really, it's going to be the wind that's going to, bring the scores down what we've seen. And so the wind doesn't blow here, a lot like Kapalua for the Century Tournament of Champions. Then this course is pretty much defenseless. Hence, why we see it get boat raced the last 2 times they played here. Now, again, I think it's going to play a little tougher because weather is going to be prevalent, it looks like. And also, they made it to a par 71, and they got the rough up. I already mentioned pretty much all this, and then, typically because of the wind, I do look at locals and Texans, some Aussies or South Africans, guys that typically can handle the wind. Someone that I also keep an eye on from like a DFS side or even a betting side. So, okay, I think that's it on the course breakdown from like a high level overview. Now we can dive into some of this stuff. So real quickly, I'll show you the map, and I think it was hole I was looking at this. Maybe it was 9 was the hole that I think there's a bridge though, and I don't see him showing the bridge. But I remember Burns, like he missed a cut last year. Actually, like ended up like in second the year before. Then of course he went out and missed a cut last year. But actually, I think got into this water. Like that's like literally the only time I've seen anybody struggle. But it's a pretty, it kind of goes out, comes back. And like I said, there's that Rolette Creek that kind of runs through this thing. Then you got this little bigger body of water. But again, you'd have to go a pretty bad shot on this par 3. And then another par 3. Again, I just don't feel like it really gets in the way anywhere that I noticed. And then if you want just a quick head overview, like I said, it's pretty benign, pretty blah. You can see the trees, some sand. Again, what we've seen is that if you watch this, I mean, Sebastian Munoz came out last year and easily could have shot a 59. He dropped a 60 on him, but was, had an easy, if I remember right, a pretty good chance to birdie like the last hole and ended up like par. And I think 18 is a par 5. So that shows you right there. I mean, and Munoz can do that, right? I think last year he shot a 60 and a 61 and was one of my favorite guys. I hit him on, first round leaders quite a bit. And actually was one of my favorite guys to play on DFS and Showdown. So that stung when Mr. Munoz went over to the live, but he was volatile, right? I mean, you knew what you were getting. You were going to get greatness or you were going to get pain. I had this in here whenever we talk about Texas, and I've got a whole list of the locals here, which, typically it does resonate. It does, show that Texans playing in Texas typically do pretty well, unless it's Mr. Ryan Palmer at his home course, the Colonial for the Charles Schwab. But other than that, of course, if you look at what Jordan Spieth, and this is like last year data, but it holds pretty true. I mean, the guy is like pretty much first in everything when he's in Texas, right? So scored a par, rounds in the 60s, inside the top 10, whatever, 5 or under better rounds, total birdies, he's third. And then here's other guys who had the most rounds in the 60s. Now, also, these guys have played a ton of golf, right, in Texas, so that's also part of it. But Charlie Hoffman feels good when he goes to Texas. Ryan Palmer and Kuchar and all these guys are in the field and all pretty good DFS plays. If you want to take some crazy top 10 shots on Palmer or Hoffman, I don't know what Kuchar, I don't think you get good enough odds. And I even noticed Ryan Palmer's odds because he had a good showing at the Wells Fargo. Like, first time that guy's made a cut and actually done something in a while. Not hating on Ryan Palmer. Big fan, actually, of his game. He's just been in a bit of a slump for like the last year and a half or so. Okay, let's real quickly look at the scorecard. You can see number 12 at one time when it was a par 5 was 52% of the time they were birdie in that hole. When you see Eagles at 5%, you can see why they, said, hey, this is ridiculous. These guys are driver, 9-iron pitching wedge into this par five or whatever. But if you look at quite a few, I mean, when I say birdie opportunities, this course gives it up, right? 50%, 40%, 45. I mean, half of the field, so what is that? 6 holes, almost half the field every time is making a birdie on that hole. And then even eagles, you're getting up there. And then you can see all the other holes, are pretty high. I mean, really, except for hole number 16, they take this course apart pretty well. But like I said, if the wind blows, I think it's going to be a little bit different. Now, when I say that, I'm saying they might shoot 19 under, 20 under instead of 25, 26. But we'll see. And then look through the score. Oh, I did have one more note I want to share here. So for Showdown, one thing that I noticed was, I've always looked to see which is the best, guys to take off which tee. And I like the guys going off 1 because you get this string here of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So let's hypothetically say you don't get your birdie streak, it doesn't start at 8, but if you birdie 9, 10, and 11, well, there you go, right? You've got, birdie holes. So what I'd be looking at from a Showdown perspective, maybe a slight advantage is instead of taking guys off 10, because you literally have this, the second hardest hole in the course to deal with. And then you got 7, 9, 3. I mean, I guess if you want to say for TPC Craig Ranch, it's a tough start. But then the middle of this is where they just, do a ton of damage. So that's all. If you want a side note, I'd start guys on hole number 1, which, they do shoot them off both sides for sure for Thursday, Friday. And then I called out number 12 here. So now you can see it's a 493 par 4 instead of the par 5 that they were destroying. Now, they definitely made it a hole now where the birdie it is going to be quite a bit more difficult. All right, so what's the player profile that I'm going with that they're doing all the analysis that I've done, and it kind of shows it's a second shot course, but it's not like RBC Heritage. I mean, you really just need these 3 key ingredients. I think irons are king, ball striking with driving distance. So ball striking is really taking driving distance and approach into effect. So you're really just kind of tripling down on all of this. And then, what it's going to take if you got to go through it, guys with, decent putters. Now, I'm not saying you got to gain 10 strokes, but, everyone that's won this thing has gained like 3, 4, 5 strokes with a putter on the field, which is very standard. There's one proximity to the pin that really shows up here, and that's at 200 plus. I'm guessing, or again, I've always stated this, you got some long holes, but you also have a lot of guys trying to go for, the par 5. So that probably increases that. And that gets it 35% of the approach shots over the last 2 years at this course have come in at over 200 yards. I already mentioned these long par 3s. There's 3 of them between 200 and 225. That's a bit of the course defense. And then really, again, it's a scoring fest. It's a birdie fest. It's a putting contest. A lot like what we see at Shriners. I'll talk about comparable courses when we get into this. So, of course, I'm looking at birdie or better opportunities. Who gets the most of those? And then birdie. So that's the stroke gain model that I'm going to be working with. And then if we want to, always validate, and also just really, it's 2 parts. One is to validate, and the other is to give you the names of who, which you could go find this, but you can see the stroke gain day and with of what they did. And it also kind of brings back, so this would be 2021. Of course, Cashley won the first, ever, AT&T Byron Nelson at TPC Craig Ranch. You can see irons and putter. Gained, a little bit against the field, but it wasn't the strong suit. It was really irons and putter. And you kind of see that, flows. I mean, you can win tournaments a lot of different ways. Daniel Berger gained 5 and 2. Patty Kazire didn't gain off the tee, but he really did it with putting and irons. So for me, it's irons and putter, but it's really hard to predict who's going to have that good putting out, which is sometimes a good thing. Hence, how you get a Wyndham Clark winning the Wells Fargo is that, not only did he put the irons together, but he gained 7.5 strokes with a putter. And that's a combination that if you do that, you are going to win or be, second in a lot of tournaments. But anyways, you can see some names here that typically do well. Scott Stallings, Bramlett. So these guys, you can also look through and say, well, crazy distance off the tee. I wouldn't say crazy, but 330. Bramlett like 330. Johnny Vegas. But Seamus Power and Spieth, at this time was hitting 280 to 300. Patty Kazire, Schwartzel, Berger, I put those guys all not, around a 300-yard mark. But there is bombers, but you can do it different ways. And then if we look at 2022, where Cashley won again, still gained 5.2 and 4 with the putter. So, again, very strong with the irons and the putter. Jordan Spieth, same thing, 6 with the irons, 1.4 with the putter. There's Munoz, which typically he can go nuts with that. Hideki, irons, putter. And we go to James Hahn. Now that he's unique, right? And he's actually in the field, and I don't think it's not even a terrible bet, but gained, typically a really good ball striker, just typically very horrific, specifically with the putter within like 5 feet. I've seen him miss a ton. And then Molinari, typically, if he's going to get it done, it's going to be a lot with his short game. And that kind of hold the truth. But anyways, gives you some names of guys, and it's done well in the past. Okay, so the first thing that I always look at when I do my custom stat models is recent form. And if you are curious, when I did the player profile, I showed you those stroking categories. Approach, I'm waiting at 30, ball striking at 15, driving distance at 15, putting at 10, proximity 200 plus. I mentioned 35% of the time shots are coming in at that range at 10%. Those long par threes at 5, you need to make a lot of birdies, and birdie or better gain at 10. And you can probably say, well, why wouldn't you put more weight on birdies? When I go into actually picking my picks, I will, of course, dive in and have that whole kind of chart that will get into that more. But really, I'm just trying to identify, I want to weight more of the guys that have the tools to get birdies. Not so much concerned that, hey, are they closing the deal on birdies as much? But it's still going to pull that in. And then, of course, so 15% is on the scoring side, I guess is the simplest way to put it. All right, with that said, got no filters turned on, and this is looking over the last 6 tournaments or 24 rounds of golf these guys have played. And number one, no shocker, Scottie Scheffler and Jordan Spieth, right? These are the 2 guys. There's 5 guys up there, but really there's 2 guys really similar to what we saw at the Mexico Open when we had Mr. Jon Rahm and Tony Finau. And crazy enough, they were both right there at the end. I'll be very interested to see if that happens again for this tournament, because I feel like that's kind of unique when you've got 2 guys that are glaring, not super glaring. I wouldn't say Jordan Spieth is like that much better than a Terrell Hatton, but Scottie Scheffler out of this field is way above and beyond. Of course, number 2 right now, ranked in the world, whatever. And so, anyways, I don't know. If we get past those guys, I feel like, again, like I said at the Mexico Open, the floodgates open for anyone to win if Scottie Scheffler or Spieth don't take this thing home. Okay, so with that said, at number 1, Scheffler, they got Spieth, Terrell Hatton, Tom Hoge, Eric Cole. Of course, that's a guy that came out of nowhere at the Honda. And, well, he had a good showing at AT&T Pebble Beach, but I think he came on everybody's radar there and has been playing amazing golf. I don't think it's a bad play at all, even though he's not crazy long, but, man, the guy's got a ridiculous short game. Sam Stevens, who had a decent Wells Fargo. I picked him. I bet him. I played him last week at Wells Fargo. Had a better Thursday, Friday, and kind of fell apart on the weekend. He actually got to play with Rory, I believe, on Sunday. Had a double bogey to start the day, and then he was fine. Just struggled on the first hole. Davis Riley missed the cut at the Wells Fargo by quite a bit. But that is what it is. Michael Kim, I mentioned, was, he's a local and, won on bent grass at a TPC course, to John Deere, Deere Run, TPC Deere Run. And seems like, we'll maybe dive into a little more on the player analysis, but if you look at his finishes and what this guy's been doing, he's been playing solid golf, and you can see that he ranks 8th against my model out of this field over the last 6 tournaments played. Kevin Roy's got elite distance off the tee. Jason Day, of course, missed the cut, as I mentioned, at the Wells Fargo. Stefan Jaeger, there's definitely going to be some plays where I'm going with guys with crazy irons and hope they can putt. Stefan Jaeger falls right into that camp, like a Tom Hoge, like a Eric Van Ruin that's down there. Elite iron players. You could throw Morikawa literally into this camp now, as I've stated. Guys that hit fairways, really good with their irons, and just stink with their putters. But if the putter goes off, they got a good chance of winning. I got Dylan Wu, Will Gordon, EVR that I just talked about, and then Nate Lashley, who also was up there leading at the Wells Fargo. I don't know, was that Saturday, and then kind of fell back, of course, on Sunday. Now, looking at more recent form, I wanted to pull this up last 12 rounds, same everything else, just to see what would change. And same 2 at the top, Scheffler, Spieth, but Mark Hubbard pops up there. Sam Stevens moves up, Hideki, Terrell Hatton. Jimmy Walker, he had another good Sunday at the Wells Fargo, and he's also a local Texan, so somebody that you might want to think about looking at like a top 10 bet. I don't think he can win it, but he's 110. Oh, and I'll just give you a little side note. All these odds that you're seeing here under money line is coming from DraftKings Sportsbook, and if you are betting on this, I typically bet DraftKings Sportsbook, but you can get better odds at probably anywhere but DraftKings Sportsbook. I actually did all my betting through PointsBet. I think I told you guys a while ago. I've got 2 different apps that I use. I don't shop all over. I'm not going to set up all those apps and accounts and all that. So, but PointsBet's got a lot better odds on most of these guys. And I would guess I haven't checked Odds Checker. Of course, go check that. It'll tell you where you get the best odds if you've got all kinds of different accounts. But if you don't have a lot of accounts, it's worth it. On some of these guys, you're talking 20 to 50 points. And I'll call some of that out when I get to my betting card. All right, EVR, I like. Game with the irons. Michael Kim, been playing really good golf, I mentioned. Kevin Roy, I'm kind of shocked he's still up there, but I mean, you can see the putter. But really good ball striker. Then go with the irons. And maybe what I say, driving distance. I always get him and that Brent Grant mixed up. Nate Lashley, Seabez, right? Amazing putter, short game. Again, that could do it here. That could win the day. I don't think you have to be seriously long. I think it's an advantage if you're hitting it longer as it always is, shorter irons. But could definitely get it done. Seabez, Eric Cole, and Davis Riley kind of rounds out your recent form over the last 12 rounds. No filters turned on against my model. Okay, so as always, we do recent form, and then we go check out who's done well at this track. Of course, at TPC Craig Ranch now, again, we've only had 2 tournaments here, one both by KH Lee, but still, at least we've got some history knowledge. That's a good thing. And, in his pretty recent form. That's also, it's kind of a mix of both. So looking over just the last 8 rounds of golf here, which is all I could do against my model, Scott Stallings actually pops up number 1. That kind of goes back to, he's got serious length off the tee. I put him in, a bomber category. Typically, the putter is what will let him down. But, yeah, he's done very well here. Not bad to take a long shot on that guy. Again, I think you get way better than, well, not way better, but probably 80 to 1 on other places. You got Hideki, who, I don't know if I showed that, but there is a stat out there. I've showed it at, like, when I talk about the Valero, the other Texas tournaments, that Hideki, funny enough, when he plays in Texas, gains the most he gains anywhere else, and he gains like a stroke with his putter. Now, that's significant, right? Because Hideki typically, is not the greatest putter, even though he, won the Masters, amazing enough. With that said, it's just a side note. I mean, I want to bet Hideki. I'm just not a huge fan of betting anyone at 20 to 1 pre-tournament. Jordan Spieth, KH Lee, again, I mentioned he was at 25 to 1, now down to 22. Again, I think you shop that around. Joseph Bramlett at 65. Again, all these odds, I think you could do better. Cameron Champ at 90 to 1. Ryan Palmer, 110. You got Davis Riley, Scott Brown, Trey Mullinax, James Hahn, Patty Kazire, Scotty Scheffler, Wes Bryant, and Stefan Jaeger. If you're curious, against my model, which I think is what you're looking for at TPC Craig Ranch, that's how those guys have fared. Top 15. Okay, and I always typically do this. Now, it's a little tricky with this because I don't have 5 years of data against this course. We have 5 years of the tournament, and the other courses are probably somewhat similar. I'm not saying like they were night and day, but if you want to just focus, you can take just a look at these 2 columns. Will represent, but of course, Jordan Spieth, over the 5 years of this tournament, he gains the most strokes. Of course, KH Lee, which is kind of shocking, but KH Lee doesn't have these extra years. But I mean, really, on a historical right now, there's hands down KH Lee owns this thing, and Jordan would be second. And then you've got Hideki that shows up there, Scott Stallings I mentioned, Matty Kuchar with a T12, a T17. Aaron Wise is showing that he's on schedule to play, so I'm expecting that he will play. If I remember correctly, I think I do. The only tournament that Aaron Wise has ever won, it was his rookie season. It was the Byron Nelson. So that kind of makes sense that he wants to make us come out. Oh, yeah. Hello. I guess I could just look over here. There's Sung Kang. I talked about 2019. And James Hahn last year at a T9 and then a third. So there you go. A couple missed cuts. Palmer, pretty, I don't know, made the last 3-year cuts. We'll say that. And that's really about it. But just gives you, again, some more names, some more thoughts from a historical perspective. Now, as always, I mentioned ball striking is key. And again, if you look at the guys who've done well here, they are good ball strikers. And typically every course we go to, you're going to need that. I mean, it's just certain times on longer courses that you can take advantage of it. This is definitely one. And this is looking at the last 36 rounds. So this would be 9 tournaments of golf against my model. Specifically just focused on the ball striking column right here. Scotty Scheffler, Terrell Hatton, Tom Hoagie, Jason Day, Luke List, Tom Kim, Siwoo Kim, Stefan Yeager, Charlie Hoffman, Alex Smalley, Aaron Rye, Bramlett, Satoshi Gadire, who you guys know I love playing as a first round leader if he's off really early in the morning. And this is a course that could set up well. He's not long, but he's very accurate. And it's the putter. If that, I've seen it, it can go nuclear, amazing enough, even though in this field right now it's been bad. Hideki Matsuyama and Will Gordon. And then if you're curious, this is best putters, just no specific type of green, because I wanted to look at it both ways. I want to look at just who's been putting really good, and then we'll look at who's been, putting the best on bent greens. So if you're just curious, which this hasn't changed, McNeely and Montgomery were gaining so many strokes with a putter early in the season, like 10 strokes against the field, and doing really not a whole lot. You can see approach and ball striking, it was like amazing. These guys' stroke game performances were identical. It's not to say Matt McNeely is actually, we'll see this on the comp courses, has done well, but I mean, that was back. It felt like Matt was hitting at 330 off the tee and in the fairway or close to. The irons were always a little shaky, but it feels like his game has just went null and void except for the putter this year. But maybe I haven't got to watch a ton of him, but just what the stroke gain stats have been telling me. Day comes in third, Aaron Wise, which is really interesting that his putting stats, Aaron Wise is typically not a good putter. But this is looking a little bit back, right? So he was doing well, but I feel like his last couple tournaments, the putter has not been working. Well, at least last few tournaments, the putter has not been working well. Justin Suh, I believe that. Pretty good putter. Some you'll know, Harry Hall, Adam Shankit, Ben Griffin, Terrell Hatton, Chad Ramey, right? If you remember the players. Also, he won in Puerto Rico. If you got to watch that, it was like a putting expose. Also can handle the wind. Adam Hadwin, Matty Kuchar, Eric Cole, and Vincent Whaley. There's a blast from the past hanging out down there. And then I mentioned I'd show you the bent. So now this is looking at putting on bent, or again, over the last 9 tournaments, they've been on bent grass. Got to keep that in mind. This is going back a ways. Seabez, McNeely, so that flop. So Seabez does show up with a putting split that bent seems to suit him better than anything else. Justin Lauer, which that is interesting because he's typically pretty bad everywhere, I guess, but the putter. Some Derek Lamley, which this could be pulling in data from a long time ago. This guy's been on tour a long time, so take that with a grain of salt. Austin Cook, I've always said at a cheap play, I always like Austin Cook, especially if it's a tight course, not so much of a scoring fest like this is. Mac Hughes, this guy can score. He can I've always said kind of a really cheap mini for me. Cam Smith, Harry Higgs, Vincent Whaley pops up again. Seamus Power, Tom Montgomery, Scott Stallings, Eric Cole, Kuchar, and Kim, SH Kim. That would be specifically showing up putting on bent greens over the last 36 round. Now, again, I guess a good side note is, check the data because like Taylor Montgomery's only had 11 rounds on bent, at least that we have. Eric Cole and SH Kim. All the rest have a good sample size there. All right, next thing is where I believe probably the number one thing that I will focus on. If someone said you can only focus on one stroke gain category for this tournament, it would be approach. And because I believe you don't have to hit it 330 here. I said an advantage. But if you hit it 275 and in the fairway, you're still going to be able to, if you light your irons up, can go nuts. So Tom Hoagie, number one. This is looking over the last 9 tournaments, 36 rounds of golf. Scotty Scheffler, T-Hat, Tom Kim, Cole, Gadira, Davis, Riley, Bramlett, Piercy, Roy, EVR, Stefan Yeager, the Hofster, Ryan Gerard. Again, another guy showed up out of nowhere. Monday qualified for the Honda and then had like a 3rd place. David Lipsky and Jason Day are your guys that are lighting it up with the irons in general. And then what I wanted to also show you was that 35% of the time approach shot that's 200 plus, very crucial. Tom Hoagie shows up again, number one. That's kind of interesting. Augusto Nunez, the smother man who the Mexico Open was leading that thing for a while. Davis Thompson, Nate Lashley, the Hofster, Derek Ernst, Pissin Kuti, and his brother is also, I believe, got a sponsor invite. Parker, I believe his name is Kuti. Don't worry about him, but just to let you know. Tom Kim, Michael Thompson, my buddy Blackbeard, which if it shows 1 million, I think that might mean he might have pulled out of this tournament. Luke List, Kevin Roy, Davis Riley, Matthew Neesmith. Not a bad Wells Fargo. I kind of kept an eye on him. He was ball striking the crap out of it, which typically Matthew Neesmith does. and struggled with the putter. And I think I even played him in Showdown on, I believe that was Sunday. And it was like birdie, bogey, like back for it. I mean, if the guy could have just limited the damage, he would have shot like 500 that day. And then Patty Kazire, which I'll tell you guys right now, who's been with me for a while, this tournament, it was kind of like this Dallas swing a couple years back, is what got me starting to bet Patty Kazire. I think he had like a third place, like 2021. Then I think he went to like the Charles Schwab. Like he went to a couple of courses, and what I'm getting to is typically in Dallas, he does pretty well. So we'll see if that sticks around. But just a side note, that's where a lot of that came. And then I just couldn't quit him, and it was full on Brokeback Mountain kind of thing going on. All right. With that said, I'm not going to ever get every local, but these are all the guys that I know are either live in Texas, played at University of Texas or TCU or Northern Texas or wherever, have ties to the Texas area. Either they lived there growing up, they live there now, whatever it is. And, some of it, like I said, because if you grew up and played college golf, then you learn quite a bit on how to hit the knockdowns and, play in the wind, because a lot of times you're playing in the wind. Now, there's some guys that are like transplanted, like Dylan Fratelli. I think he's from South Africa. He lives in Austin, Texas, but he's been there now for, I don't know, probably most of his PGA career. So 6-7 years, we'll say. But you've got guys, like I said, of course, we all know Scotty Scheffler and Jordan Spieth. They talk about it a billion times. Tom Hoagie went to TCU, right? Flew to go see the national championship game, to watch their, Horned Frogs, whatever the hell it is, get their asses kicked. Michael Kim, I did not know he was a Texas local, but he is. Cameron Champ, I mentioned. He, for Valero at TPC San Antonio, is a member there and has been in Texas for quite a while. I mean, Ryan Palmer, typically everybody knows Jimmy Walker. And Dougie Gim played, I believe, also at the University of Texas. Pearson Coody, of course, played at the University of Texas. Harry Higgs lives, I think, in Dallas. Kramer Hickok, Sung King. I told you he's a member at this sad course, TPC Craig Ranch. So that is what it is. Andrew Landry. And then, funny enough, Brian Stewart, I guess he must have grew up there, because I know I've mentioned this a few times. He actually played his collegiate golf in Michigan here at Central Michigan in Mount Pleasant. So that is, if you are a person that's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to build a lineup of just Texans, then there you go. You know it. I've always said there's nothing worse to see a guy that ends up like top 5 out of nowhere. You never heard of him, or typically he stinks. But then you find out, oh, he's played this course his whole life. He lives in Texas and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, shit, it'd been nice to know that information. That has happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to you. Well, at least you can say now, I think I got 95% of every Texan. There, like I said, there could be some loose affiliation ones that I missed somewhere. Oh, on that note, wait a minute here. There it is. So Tom Kim, of course, he, you hear all the spending time with Jordan Spieth. So he moved to Dallas. I believe he's been there like a year now. So whatever. He's played a bit of golf in Texas now, but yeah. So I added him in there as a side note. So with that said, we are playing in Texas, and there is going to be quite a bit of wind and weather. So if you want to know the guys, over the last 12 rounds of golf played in heavy, heavy winds, these are the guys. And I call them the Wind Wizards for fun, against my model. So, and when I say 12 rounds, you'll be like, well, wait a minute. But typically for it to be rated, we're talking 20-mile-an-hour winds and above. And so you only get that maybe a couple times. Well, once a tournament, maybe over the year, you get that about 12 times is why I put that in, to keep it still recent form. If I put in 36 rounds of crazy wind, that would pull information back from like 2018. So, all right, with all that said, Trey Mullinax, which that was a little, I knew Scotty Scheffler was up there, Tony Finau, Harris English. Like, there's certain guys I know that play really well in the wind. Fleetwood typically hits a knockdown. Like, there's certain guys, like Joaquin Niemann used to be one of those guys. But Trey Mullinax, I mean, I know he hits it long. Oh, Sungjae Im is also a guy. I'm just throwing these names out there that typically, because he's such a good ball striker, Hideki Matsuyama. But anyways, here's the list. Top 15 guys and crazy wins over the last tournament, been over the last year. Got Mullinax, Scheffler, Adam Scott, of course, Australian, Texan. Trey Mullinax, I don't think is Texan. I don't know, maybe California, I feel like. Jordan Spieth, the Canadian, Adam Hadwin, funny enough. Tom Hoagie, Hideki Matsuyama, Sam Stevens. Now you got to keep an eye on this. Only 2 rounds in heavy wind, so you kind of scratch that out. Andrew Novak, and then Lanto Griffin again. For some reason, the odds are coming, so maybe he pulled out. And I don't know why I always feel like, because Lanto, his first tournament he won was actually in Texas, the Houston Open. I think it was like 2018 now, but he's actually from California. But every time I think of Lanto, I think he's a Texan. He is not. Aaron Wise, of course, Oregon Duck, Luke List, Tom Kim, Chad Ramey, which that makes sense, right, with the Puerto Rico. And then Dylan Fratelli, of course, he's a Texan, as I mentioned. I consider it because even his whole PGA career has been there. And also, he's a South Africa he's from. And those guys play in quite a bit of wind, just like Aussies. Now on the comp courses. And so what you're going to notice here to the left, look at the comp courses. I'm pulling in, of course, the data from TPC Craig Ranch. I think the best comparable course would be the Shriners, where they TPC Summerlin. So it's another TPC. And if you don't know, TPC courses, are like sponsored by the PGA Tour, and they're made as upper echelon but amateur courses, right? So I mean, all TPC courses that I've ever seen are public, and you can go play them. And so where I'm going with that is typically they build them so the average Joe Schmo doesn't struggle, right? I mean, it's not Quail Hollow, we'll say. But with that said, I'm just saying TP. So you could pull a lot of TPC courses and say, hey, that's a good comp course. But there's certain ones that we know that not a whole lot of issues. And of course, TPC Summerlin at Shriners is a pure scoring putting contest. Funny enough, I never used the Barbasol Championship, but this is one time that I think it makes sense because the field is not too far off, except for a few guys at the top who would play in the Barbasol. All right. I mean, I think I mentioned Trey Mullinex, who won it last year. It's played at Keene Trace. It's played in Kentucky. It's a par, I believe, 71. It's almost identical on all fronts on what they score. It's bent green. So everything at Keene Trace, I was like, you know what? I'm using it. And I also kind of did some cross-referencing to see, to see if guys seem like they do well at both, and they do. So, of course, you got the Waste Management, played at TPC Scottsdale. So with just those 4 courses total, if you want to know who's done the best over the last 24 rounds, 6 tournaments on those tracks, Scott Stalling, Scheffler, Matsuyama, Spieth, Mateus. But again, that's only 4 rounds, so I don't know how much I would really look into that. Mateus Schmid, Jason Day, Matthew Neesmith, K.H. Lee, which of course, and a lot of these guys have won on these tracks or done well. You got Luke List, Ryan Palmer, Bramlett, James Hahn. Of course, he had a chance to win the Waste Management back the first year Scotty won it, I believe. Yeah. Justin Lauer and then Tom Kim, who won Shriners. And like I said, if you kind of go through these guys at one time, they've won that. And then I also wanted to pull in some more Texas courses. I believe both of these, so that'd be Memorial Park and the AT&T Oaks course, TPC San Antonio, are tougher courses than this, but it kind of brings in the win element, right? So if you're curious how the board changes, Scotty Scheffler still stays right up there, but Matt McNeely, which I think I mentioned, kind of funny enough, but again, just pulling in some older data. Hideki Matsuyama, Stalling, Spieth, Mullinex, Hadwin, Schmid, again, now he's got 8 rounds. Sam Stevens, 8 rounds. Jason Day, 24. Suh with 10. Tommy Kim with 12. Then Gordon, Luke List, and JJ Spawn, of course, who won the Valero. So, again, I always tell you guys, where do I put this? I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's a bad list, but it's not my favorite. I'd probably lean more towards the one I showed on Ironman. That list was probably my favorite of who I think should do well at this course. Okay, with all that said, I wanted to show you weather now. I'm recording this on Monday afternoon, and it could change. But, of course, we got to kind of look at these things in advance because it does kind of skew which way our picks are going to go. And you can see, I mean, we're going to be gusting up to the upper 20s and averaging between 10 to 20. So Thursday is going to be breezy. And then Friday comes in and again, gusting up into the mid 20s and then the lower teens through the day. So they're going to be dealing with some wind, possibly a little bit of showers, looks like on Thursday. And then it kind of stays the same for Saturday, Sunday. I was only looking at Thursday, Friday, more of, seeing if there was a flight advantage for making the cut or whatnot. I mean, I guess if I had to pick right now, it does look like maybe AM, PM, as in you get the better of Thursday, and it says, it's going to die down a little bit as the evening goes, but I don't know. We'll see. I have to keep an eye on it. And if you're curious where I'm pulling this from, it is Windfinder, and you're going to want to pull up the McKinney Municipal Airport, I believe, on Windfinder. That's right next to the course, probably what a lot of these guys use with their private jets to go to the tournament. Okay, now real quickly, let's look at my betting card. And it's kind of funny. I pulled up, as I typically do, very early in the morning. And I was not excited at all what I was seeing from an odds perspective, and it was like, I'm not even going to bet anything. And then I went over. This was on Draftkings, and then I went over to PointsBet, and it was better. And so I started put in some. I put in these bets. I guess is a short way to put it. And these are all outright winners. And all of these have better odds over at PointsBet. I've stated that, but I want to tell you again. It's like Jimmy Walker, it's like 130 to 1, EVR 150 to 1, Michael Kim was 110, Hoagie was 50 to 1, so only 5 points better on that. Champ, I believe, was maybe at 100 to 1. Piercy, again, was a little bit better. Trey Mullinex, I think, was 150 to 1. And then Kramer Hickok, it was like 300, maybe 350. Like, that's a pretty interesting, right? I mean, he almost won the Travelers. He's been popping up this year. And I think he's, very solid T degree. I mean, I feel like he's a pretty solid player overall. Now, I don't get to see enough of Kramer Hickok, but what I have seen, of course, he's typically up there in contention. The guy can play, and I feel like he's had some good streaks. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. Of course, again, as I mentioned with the Texas ties, and then literally Sung Kang on PointsBet 700 to 1, and so I just put a couple shackles on that, and I'm like, again, if somehow the miracle happens again, right? He is a past champion of this tournament, different course, but this is his home course. So I'm always like, but I think I had this same spiel probably last year, and I think he missed a cut. So, again, could be a really good maybe DFS cheap play for the big GPP game, something like that. But, top 10, or like I said, put a buck on him. And if he hits 700 bucks to your dollar. So that's what I'm looking at right now. Of course, this will probably get a little more with top 10s as I go along. I told you guys also, if I'm betting on Monday, this is something that I've learned over the years. To go and bet the low odd guys makes no sense. And the reason why is two things. So, yes, you can say, well, the odds are going to go down. Well, okay, what? Like, I think Scotty Scheffler opened at 5 to 1 and then went down to 4.5. He went down a half point. Like, I would rather wait and see what Scotty does during the tournament. And maybe he shoots an even round the first day or one over, whatever. Or, one under. Like, other guys are shooting 5 to 7 under. Well, I'll take a shot at Scotty at 20, 30 to 1 live or 40 to 1 with knowing he's still got a chance to make the cut and has 3 days of golf. So you got to kind of think those things through. Now, what doesn't typically change is the high odds guys, as money does start to come in, they will start to drop those odds because they're trying to understand, well, why is all this money coming in on EVR or Michael Kim, which I'm pretty sure they're like, I don't know. Any of these guys, if money starts hitting them more and more, they'll start dropping their odds because they're going to think there's something they're missing. Because I honestly believe, yes, they've got smart people, and I'm sure, but it's an algorithm that's probably figuring this thing out. I have a hard time believing they've got, just crews of, guys out there that are watching golf and doing the analysis. I feel like it's gotten better for them because there used to be days where, from a betting perspective, it used to be a lot better, I guess the way to put it. The designated events didn't help. I'll tell you that right now also. The last thing I'll say is, though, if we can, as I mentioned, if Scotty Scheffler and Jordan Spieth, Scotty Scheffler has not done that well at this track. Jordan Spieth, actually, for me, should be the favorite. I'll let you in on that, too. I think he opened 10 to 1. I think he's down to 9 to 1. Again, do what you want with that. Shop it around if you want to bet it pre-tournament, but I probably would wait. And maybe, like I said, he comes out and shoots, I don't know, 2 under. And Sung Kang comes out and shoots 7 under. You're going to get better odds for him because, right? But, Sung Kang, the odds are he's not going to stay there. So, anyways, if you got 3 rounds of golf on a favorite, I'd rather wait to make the bet then. So typically my betting is always towards the long shots. Okay, let's go jump over into Fantasy National and let's go through the picks analysis. Okay, I've hopped over into Fantasy National, and as always, my quick plug for them, if you are putting any kind of money in DFS or betting and want to do some deeper analysis in what you're getting from me or any other shows, go check out Fantasy National. You can sign up for 1 month and give it a go. Okay. So real quick, just call out, this is going to be DraftKings pricing as usual, but if for some odd reason you use something else, of course you can use these picks, just going to be a different price tag for these guys who are using FanDuel, whatever. Over to the left, you can put all these kind of different filters on. I've already done pre-work as usual too, and I've got no filters turned on. Go look at the last 24 rounds of golf, and what you're going to be seeing here is what I call kind of this sneak peek dashboard that gives you the ability to set up a mini model. So pick 5 of your key stroke gain areas, gives you information like salary, projected ownership, cuts made. Then over here you get birdies gained. So how many birdies have they made over the last 6 tournaments or 24 rounds? You get recent results and tournament history, and we're going to want to focus on 2022 and 2021 if you're curious how they done on this course. Okay, with that said, I've got 25 guys identified for you that I'm interested in playing for my core player pool. Again, this is with a focus on the large GPP 200K win first place game. Just so you know, this is not really tailored to cash game or, showdown or whatever like that. So with that said, you've got some decisions to make here at the top. You've got Scotty, of course, coming in at almost 12,000. Jordan at 10.6, Terrell Hatton at 10.1, and Hideki, well, he's not in 10,000. He's upper nines, but neither here or there. We'll stick with the top three guys. And so my perspective, if you look at Scotty, he hasn't had the best go of it on this track, a 15th and a 47th, which definitely does not pay off that top price tag. And I kind of fell for paying up for Rory last. Now, funny enough, when I came out and heard his pressers for the Wells Fargo, I actually shifted. I only put in like 10 or 11 entries into the large GPP game, which I call pretty much the lottery when you got over 40,000 entries into it. And I don't typically max that out ever. So, but I am going to kind of zig when everybody might be zagging. And I don't know. I think Jordan maybe, even though it shows here projected ownership, but would be in, $1,300 less. I'll definitely go with Jordan out of these top three. Again, I mentioned, of course, he was in great form until he missed a cut at the Wells Fargo. He should be well rested. Probably, flew back to Dallas that day and has probably already been on the course working. Of course, he had a second place here last year, a T9 before, and I already showed you guys what he does typically when he's in Texas. Of course, one of his recent tournaments won was the Valero, which actually kind of got his game back on track and won the RBC. Had some runner-ups also. So that's the guy that I'm going to go with at top. They're all you can make an argument for. I'm not going to sit here and say, but you can see the one thing, proximity 200 plus, which I think is crucial. Terrell Hatton's been, quite a bit less. And then the putter is, I guess out of the three would be second place comparative, but it's so minuscule. And I feel like Jordan's putter maybe has gotten a little better, at least within that 5-foot range, where I feel like Scotty's still been missing quite a bit of putts for Scotty. Now, if that changes and all of a sudden Scotty does what typically Scotty does, then watch out. And you can all see their birdie gain are about very similar. I guess it looks like out of the three, Jordan would have the most. And, but we also know Jordan probably is maybe the most volatile out of these three picks. The next guy I'm going to go to, which I have not picked in a long time, is Hideki Matsuyama. And I just been liking what I've been seeing, this trend. Also had a T3 here last year, a 39th before that. And I think I saw something out, tweeted out that he's been already working on the range. He went and got I think he went back to Japan and got treatment and, feeling hopefully much better. And so for 9,800, that could be a steal. And also when it comes to a shootout, I do know that Hideki can score. And like I talked quite a bit about with Cam Davis, even though his price tag's at 9,800, I think from a point perspective on DraftKings, you can expect some, consecutive birdie bonuses with Hideki and even that some eagles. So that's where I'm at out of those four guys. And you're going to say, well, wait a minute, you already got two at the top, but you're going to see I don't have a lot in the 8,000 range. Where I have a lot of guys that I'm interested in is the 7,000 range. And how I plan on building this is, picking a guy or two, of course, at the very top. And then I'm going to be fading quite a bit of the 8-9. And then a lot of guys in the sevens is how the build looks like it's going to be working out for me, again, in the GPP large game. Okay. Tom Kim, again, I mentioned he did move to Dallas, so you could kind of state that angle. And I've also stated where typically Tom Kim, I think, should do better is this, kind of a shootout. But you can see, I don't know, since February, the birdies have definitely been on a downward string. The putter has been a big issue. The driver, of course, he doesn't have the distance, but typically he's one of the more accurate drivers of the golf ball. But I don't need that here. So with all that said, I'm going to kind of pass on to Tom Kim at 9,600. Jason Day, who knows? We'll have to see how this works. But he's been on this trend, right, where he had a 9th, a 10th, and then a 19th, and then he's been kind of trailing off lately. Even though the putter against his field shows number 2, I feel like the putter is not as magical as it's been. And you can see how the others, stroke gain categories that I'm looking for is not the strongest. So in 9,400, I'm going to go ahead and pass on that. He did play here last year, had a T51, then a miscut. So his history, but we also know his game, like a Ricky Fowler, has picked up quite a bit. But I feel like he's been a little bit on the downtrend. Literally it's been showing a trend in the wrong direction. So with that, you got to pick something to stand. I think Cage Lee for me is fool's gold, and I'll state why. Now, let's go look at, because I don't know the answer, I don't remember off the top of my head of what Cage Lee's form was coming into when he won before here. So, yeah, I mean, you could see he was really not doing it. He had a good showing again at the Wells Fargo, which you could state again. But before that, he had 3 missed cuts, a 50. I mean, nothing that would really point you that Cage Lee was going to win the Byron Nelson again. So you can make the argument that it is actually, he's got a better recent form, if you want to say, coming in. So I don't know. Like I said, to go three-peat, that would be crazy. Now there is definitely horses for courses, and that's the argument, right? But I don't know. I just can't do it. I think I gotta, again, going with the large GPP. I think so many people are going to be playing Cage Lee. That 9,300 price tag also tells me I can't do it. And if he comes and wins or top fives again, then it is what it is. Now, if I put a ton of lineups in, I'm not saying I'm not going to play any Cage Lee, but to hit the GPP, you've got to zig where else is zagging. And I think if you looked at the guy who took down the Wells Fargo, when you kind of looked at what I don't remember off the top of my head, but when I looked at it, there was some things that you were kind of like, oh, that is definitely different. Like he wasn't, playing a lot of the usuals. I mean, I think, of course, he started like Wyndham Clark and then worked his way down, I guess. And of course, had Xander. And Xander was only 10% owned, right? Because you kind of had to make a decision between Rory and Xander. And, a lot of people went the Rory train instead of going with Xander because he was only 10% owned in the big game. So, again, you got to make those kind of calls. Adam Scott, finally had a T5, but does that tell me I need to pay 9,200 for him? Nope, not going to do it. Siwoo Kim, again, not the greatest show, but Siwoo is Siwoo, right? I mean, A, the course history here is not good, but B, at any time, Siwoo Kim can go off. But I feel like the putter's regressed. I've kind of seen him switch back and forth between the short putter, back to kind of that longer putter where I feel like he had more success with. But again, 9,100, I'm going to say no. I'd rather go to Matt Kuchar. I showed you guys that typically in Texas, the guy just goes off. And, pretty good recent form. A third at Valero, again, a Texas course, RBC at 19th, and a Wells Fargo at 23rd. So, also he's had good course history here, a 12th and a 17th. So, I guess if I had to go pick someone, in this kind of, again, he's the lowest of the 9,000, I could probably find more reasons to go Kuchar. Seamus Power, who actually had a nice showing at the Wells Fargo, but other than that, it's been pretty rough. So, with that said, I'm going to say no to Seamus at almost $9,000. Mag McNeely. Now, maybe this is where Mag McNeely, I'm really kind of confused from a betting perspective. I don't know what he was, but if he's this high up in DFS, he probably has crappy odds on betting, but he doesn't really have a good course history here. And the guy has done nothing this year except he can putt, but I mean, you might as well, it's kind of funny. They put these guys together all the time because I've stated these guys do the same exact thing. They can putt. But, I mean, at least Taylor Montgomery has been a little better with a driver. And I didn't turn on fairways, but, I guess both these guys don't hit a ton of fairways. But you have a lot better argument with Taylor Montgomery, I believe, than you do with Matt McNeely. So I'm just going to go ahead and pass on all the upper eights. And then even Benoit, everybody, he was in the 9,000 range last week at Wells Fargo. And his odds were, for Benoit were, again, yep, he's had some decent showings. He had a T5, but not on this course. 8,600. I'm going to go ahead and pass. And actually, I'm going to go to Tom Hoge, which I think his ownership, even though right now is showing, and again, there's a little bit of lineup, so I do not go on this projected ownership, but it's been very hit or bust, right? I mean, he did have a T17 here last year. Why I'm on Hoge is because I'm taking the narrative in the stance that I want the best iron players and hope that on these kind of simple greens, they're big, there's some undulation, but I mean, we've seen guys that like the Mexico Open, do well. So of course he doesn't have driving distance, but he hits a ton of fairways and he's doing everything else that I want. So for me, 8,500, okay, I'll spend that. Also, Minwoo Lee, I think some people are going to, he was all the hype when he kind of made the transition over here. Of course, he did show up at the Players and then fell apart on Sunday. But the guy does have some, very unique talents. And if his ownership's low, I'd rather go to a Minwoo Lee where I think it's kind of a little bit out of sight, out of mind, right? I mean, he missed a cut at the Heritage, missed a cut at the Masters. He's never played in this tournament before. So I'm actually kind of interested in Minwoo Lee now. And of course, he's done all the good stuff that he's done over at the DP World Tour. Side note, why I think of that, if you didn't know, Adrian Meronk, which, has been playing a bit over here on the PGA, did win the Italian Open, I believe by a stroke over Lagasse, I believe. I saw on the golf shop. I was not following. I did not have no money involved in it. But just side note, Adrian Meronk did get a win on the DP World Tour because I'm sure we'll be seeing him shortly. Kind of an interesting one's Aaron Wise, right? I mean, he has shown that he is going to play. His first victory was here. He's not the greatest showing, right? The putter is showing. I just don't. Let me just go click on Aaron Wise. We got to go look at this real quick because maybe something's just off in my brain. But when I've watched him, so, he gained with the putter, but did absolutely nothing else. Gained with the putter at the Honda, lost at the Waste Management, lost at the Arnold Palmer. So I guess I could see why over the last 6 tournaments it's showing, well. But anyways, like typically it's the ball striking where Aaron Wise makes his bread and butter over his career. And it was the putter that always hurt him. But we know he's coming off quite a break. We don't know, at least I don't know, how much golf he played during that break since the Players. But I mean, just in a terrible run here, except for the Honda. So with that said, I can't play him. Now, maybe I get a little nutty because, again, it's the GPP. And if his ownership is like crazy low, yep, why not? Let's take a shot. So there's some thoughts on that. Stefan Jaeger, like a Tom Hoge, I'm going to go ahead and go with one of the better iron players that's in this tournament. Had a T38 last year, has some, recent good form. If his putter literally could have, worked a little bit better for the Mexico Open and the Wells Fargo, the guy could have been a top 5 finish. That's how good he was hitting from tee to green. Just the putter was just not cooperating. I think I'm going to forget now, but I think it was the Mexico Open. I'm not going to go into it, but I think he led day 1 and then kind of followed what he could have done if the putter would have won. He still was just out ball striking everybody. It was just the putter did not go. So I'm on Stefan Jaeger. Adam Hadwin, I don't feel like, I shouldn't probably say this because he probably has, but I don't know, just cannot score enough for me. Of course, he only made a cut at the Players at a T13. And then, absolutely nothing. And then everybody, we always feel in the golf industry, he should do well at the RBC Heritage, and it just does never work out. So, no. JJ Spawn, right, won the Valero now, 2 years ago? It would have been. I don't remember how he actually fared at the Valero. I don't feel like it was that good for his follow-up to defend. Where is 22nd? So not bad. I don't know why I cannot remember that. Did they actually show that? I just missed it. Yeah, they did. I didn't need to click in. Yeah, no, I don't know. Not what I'm looking for. I'm not saying he can't make the cut, do okay, but the putter, I guess, would be the one thing that typically on Bermuda, I think of JJ Spawn. I don't think of him on bent, and I just don't think he can score low enough. And same with Seabez. Now, I talked about he could do it here. He's also been in good form. He had a T12 here last year. So someone that could be, you see ownership right now is showing a bit up there, but I mean, I'm just saying that it is a course that he, could do well on. Davis Riley, no thank you. I don't know. I've not been on the Davis Riley train. And, he won a course at the Zurich, but you can't even count that. I'm sorry. I'll never count it as a win. But he did have a T9 here last year. I mean, I don't know. That's something I just really got to think about. I mean, you can see the ball striking, but how bad he did at the RBC and the Wells Fargo, I have a hard time of plugging him in. And also, it's just been a kind of a rough go of it. I really go to Bramlett. He's kind of been the guy that I've been playing and just waiting for that putter to turn on. He had a good showing for me at the Mexico Open, was one of my picks. The Wells Fargo, I believe I picked him there too. Because like I said, the last 2 tournaments and this one, I literally did not change this mini model. I looked at it, I'm like, no, these are all the key things that I need. The only thing else you could have plugged in the long par 3s, but that's kind of odd. I mean, the proximity 200 outs is kind of the same thing, right? I mean, especially if you drop the ball on the tee and don't hit it off a tee. I'm going to stick with my guys. Same with Will Gordon. I've been riding these guys, and they've been performing okay. I mean, Gordon missed the cut at the Wells Fargo, but I think he missed it by a stroke. I think it was pretty close, but I'm going to stay with them. Brandon Wu, funny enough, side note, his odds, I think he came out at 90-1, and then he's dropped to like 65, something like that. But I do kind of like Brandon Wu. I'm going to go ahead and stick with him. Same thing. Just going with elite ball strikers, but going to need the putter to pop on all these guys. Scott Stallings, I told you, pretty elite course history, has that, skill set that I'm looking for. but it is very fluky when he actually decides to putt, as a lot of good ball strikers. So funny enough, as you saw, there's a lot of guys in the sevens, and I really didn't pick but what, one or not a lot of guys in the nines or eights. And so, like I mentioned, the sevens are going to be kind of heavy for me. I like Sam Stevens. I'm sticking with this guy. Showed up at the Valero, and it's just a ball striking again. Just going with a lot of good ball strikers. Nobody. If Grillo was here, I'd be playing him too. But as I picked last week, and he did make the cut, but didn't do a whole lot on Sunday. Justin Suh is kind of interesting. I don't have a big problem. Just not a huge Justin Suh guy yet. Ben Griffin, kind of on and off of that. You can see drives the ball long, the irons. And again, I need guys. I feel for this course with the irons. I mean, Aaron Rye, you can make an argument for, but I just, you can't pick every guy that's been hitting well the irons, and also his distance. Aaron Rye is a great guy for, like, again, when we go to the Charles Schwab for the Colonial, will be someone that I'll be looking for. Luke List, of course, ball striker extraordinaire. I think quite a few people played him at the Wells Fargo, missed a cut, and the putter's just been so atrocious that you can see he's dead last pretty much in this whole field. So I'm going to pass. You know what? I'm going to jump on the Michael Kim train. I mean, he's been showing, again, pretty solid golf. Now, it could be a super chalk bomb waiting to happen. You can see last year, or 2 years ago, he had a 67th here. I mean, the guy, like I said, was playing brutal golf. But, I mean, he is trending in the direction to maybe, even at the Wells Fargo, I mean, if you watched, he missed a lot of, 10-foot birdie putts. But everything else has been really good. So he might be super chalky, and if that's the case, maybe I do punt. But right now, I am on the Michael Kim. Mac Hughes, I mean, since his win at the RSM, I feel like it's been, right? Or was it RSM, or he went at Sanderson Farms? I forgot now in the fall. Let's go see. Sanderson Farms. I apologize. It was not the RSM. It was Sanderson Farms, which, I don't know, that just did not fit for me because usually he's just wayward. And that course is pretty long and tight. So I'm going to pass on him. Eric Cole, which does not fit the driving distance so much, but man, just the more I watch this guy, and maybe this is just on a run, the guy's short game and everything is solid. So, I'm going to go ahead and jump on that. Dylan Wu, I like him. Again, not the distance, but everything else. He's making a ton of birdies. Really nice form. Played here last year, missed a cut, but, I kind of feel like if you've been playing DFS, you plug in Dylan Wu and Brandon Wu back when they were like in the 6,000 low sevens. They were the guys to be playing, making cuts, and getting you to the weekend and doing some scoring. I'm gonna jump off Neesmith train. Not a bad showing at Wells Fargo, but nope, I'm off the Higo train. Just not doing enough with the putters, which you could make the argument with the irons, a lot of things. You know what? I'm gonna still play some Cameron Champ, and I think it's. Again, he's had a good course history here. When I say that, I mean a T38, a T55, but for 7,300. And again, he's got that spike ability. He did it at the Mexico Open. Yes, he didn't make the cut at the Wells Fargo, but I've seen a little bit out of him. And again, I've just watched Cameron Champ for so long that I'm still in that trend of when he shows a little bit of upstroke. Let's go see what he did at Wells Fargo real quick. I'm curious. I didn't even look. I was watching him a little bit. So he gained off the tee, lost in the irons, and gained a little with the putter. And I think he ended up like missing by a stroke or two. Like, it wasn't ridiculous. Not like what Riley did. I think he shot like 7 over on the first day, something ridiculous. So I'm interested in Cameron Champ. Adam Schenk, I will play him on Bermuda. That's just where I think of him. But you can see, again, some spikes. Spiked at the Valspar, spiked at RBC. But I'm going to pass this week. Mark Hubbard, kind of back on that. You see, training well. It's had some good finishes here. Good on all this. Doesn't have the distance, but you don't have to be super long. I mean, it helps. Again, I'm looking for it, but I can also kind of pass if these other things are clicking. And his irons have been really good. Again, I'm just going back over and over and over. I want guys with really good irons, and that's the way I'm leaning. You can make an argument play Nate Lashley. Been playing in good form. Had a T17 here. Kind of overlooked him, I'm not going to lie. I mean, I knew he did pretty well at the Wells Fargo. The irons have been hot. I didn't pick him. Honestly, though, there's no good... I think he's a good play. So maybe I'll plug him in. Not sexy. We'll say that for sure. From a pick perspective. MJ Duffy. Picked him last week. Also not a bad play. You can kind of see he's doing a lot of the things. But he made the cut, head at 47th. Vincent Norman, I think it's a good play too. Also showed up pretty good at the Zurich. I'm gonna forget his who was his partner. Horgard, I think. Was it Rasmus? I don't know. Either way, he had another European guy with him. Again, the putter's definitely not good, but everything else is okay and it has some good finishes. I think the reason why I passed was everything was done on past Palm vacation swing. So I mean, I know I was on him for the Mexico Open, but got to see a little more about him. Ryan Palmer, I'd be shocked if his ownership's that high right now. But again, I told you in Texas, he had a fifth year, had a showing at the Wells Fargo, so maybe that does get him up. People get, kind of start correlating that together. But I've watched the guy a long time. I actually was watching him when he always hit a draw, now to a fade. And I kind of actually, he hit a nice draw. I'm sure he can still hit the draw, but that he made that change is, I guess, just to hit more fairways. But I mean, at one time, a few years back, the guy was if you looked at consecutive birdie bonuses, which I did this analysis a while back, it was like him and Abe Answer or something like that, if I remember right, that out of 2021 that were leading, just the guy made a ton of birdies, but that's kind of fallen a little bit back. I don't know if I've ever picked Jimmy Walker, but I've got to get on the train. I mean, look what the guy's doing at 7,100. The results are showing. I mean, he's also, of course, I mentioned from Texas. Everything kind of points to, I think, as I mentioned, I even bet him like 110. I think it was maybe a little better than a points bet. Could actually be a very interesting top 10 bet. I've not done that yet, but neither here or there. I'm jumping on the Jimmy Walker train. We'll see how that works out. Lipsky, Duncan. I looked at Duncan for a long time. I don't think it's a bad play. I like him almost as like a Monday leader. So let's see where Tyler Duncan starts from a tee time. EVR, just elite with the irons. I've talked about this a lot even at the Mexico Open. Could just go super hot. And I don't have to worry about the wayward driver. That's his problem, is he doesn't hit a lot of fairways. He's got okay distance. The putter also, but I've seen that putter go so hot and can go so cold. So we'll see. The Hoster, it's hard not to play him here in Texas. But if you kind of look at the trend, right, I mean, it's just, really fallen off. And he missed a cut in 2022. I mean, his game's been in a pretty rough shape, but it has breathed a little bit of life. And the Texas thing did come true for the Valero. So I will play him, but I'm not telling you guys to put him like in a heavy rotation. But for 7,100, I think, if you're down there, play him. I'm going to jump back on some other men. It's been a little while, but, I've seen enough out of him, and he kind of fits the mold with what we want at the Mexico Open, and I didn't play him, and I was kind of bitter. But T25 here last year, there's a lot of, I think, reasons. I feel like he's a California kid, but maybe he is Texan. I don't know off the top of my head, but something to look into. Lanto, good showing the last time in Texas at the Valero, but not for me right now. I don't know where he's at still with getting over I believe it was the hip injury. I'm back on Molinex. Really, that was kind of what got me over to the Barbasol. I started to look at like what courses tend to, like, where the PGA just go nuts on from a scoring perspective. And then the more I kind of looked at Keen Trace, I was like, you know what, this is actually a pretty damn good comp. Of course, Trey Molinex won there last year. The Barbasol, that was a bit of it. He also does a lot of things. Again, we need him to putt. And we can see it. Let's see the last time that guy's actually had a good putting round. He's also got elite distance. So the Arnold Palmer, which I don't know if I picked him there. I don't remember now, but he had 8th. And he gained on Bermuda. What is this showing? It splits. It shows dead even for bent, which is technically his best surface in. Let me see this real quick. Just one moment. So where I was going with this is the Barbasol, or bent greens, and that's where he won. So the Valero, he gained 8 strokes. That's Bermuda. All the way down here. He only gained 3 there. Rocket Mortgage is bent. That's Bermuda. I have no idea. Bermuda. So a lot of Bermuda, which is funny, though. It's showing that he actually still, over his career, has lost on Bermuda. All right. Anyways, I'm on Molinex. Nope. I'm Blackbeard. Can't score enough. Grayson Sig, Doug Gam, Long. Okay, we're going to fly through a lot of these guys. Scott Piercy, I'm jumping on this bandwagon. Of course, he had a T2 here. I don't remember if I think he's got Texas ties. I don't know if he was in my locals or not. I don't remember now. I've just seen these these pop up like crazy rounds that he'll be shooting like 8 under for the round. I'm not talking about one. He's done this, right? And he almost won, what, the 3M and then fell apart on Sunday. I'm not saying he's going to win this thing, but I am saying that he should be able to go out and get you at 6,900, a top 30, top 25 finish. So that's good enough. James Hahn, this is, as you see, not a model pick. This is purely what I know. Of course, he's had some good showings here at T9. And the guy is a really good ball striker. I know this doesn't show it, but man, let's go see this for a second. Because whenever I've seen him, yeah, I mean, he had a pretty good spurt of ball striking right here. The 3M, don't I remember that he was up there? We actually did everything. That's bent greens. Maybe there's some kind of correlation to the 3M. It is a TPC Twin Cities course. I think it's a tougher course, my own personal, but then Cam Champ won there. And, I'm just saying, like, maybe there's something there. There's a 9th at the AT&T Byron Nelson, Wells Fargo. Yeah, that's where he just fell apart at the end of the 3M. I don't know. He has those pops, James Hahn. So, I don't know. These two kind of correlate. It's kind of funny. I really thought of them as a correlation, but these two are kind of similar. So, maybe that works. I'm going to skip down, passing on all these guys. Harry Higgs, I thought about for a bit. Not a bad play. I really believe that he could do pretty well here. He's kind of due. He's been, I don't know, showing a little bit of form. He's talked about a lot. A lot of these guys know, like even Wyndham Clark, you probably heard about going to get like mental strength, if you want, like mental prep, mental, like how to prepare yourself better mentally to handle 4 days of golf, being in contention. And I think for Harry, it's, starting to help him a little bit. Who else? I think I had one more pick way down here for you. I think I had two more. Brent Grant is just kind of unique. He does two things very well. That 200 out, driving distance, he's making a lot of birdies. He popped up at the corrals. All the rest are, so I'm just saying, if you're down here, you want to take a flyer on a guy down to sixes. I think a lot of people would not be playing many guys down to sixes. And I'm not saying two. I'm just saying I think that's going to work. Just these guys kind of showed up, and these are like the two guys, almost like the days of the old Neesmith, where the model loves them, but they're not scoring. I mean, out of the two, Kevin Roy, you can make a better argument for. I mean, the Open, Mexico Open, he had a T18, at least made the cut at the Corrales, Puerto Rico. He's a Corn Ferry guy. He does all these things very well. He needs the putter to flip. So, I guess out of the two, I'd probably more advise probably not Brent Grant. We'd go with Kevin Roy. And if I get down here to the very bottom, I'm just pulling this up just to tell you again. If you want to take a crazy, he's at Bear Men, Sung Kang, of course, past champion back in 2019. He is a member of this golf course. He's made some cuts, at least showed up at the AT&T Pebble Beach. Again, he's been in pretty horrific form since that win. Let's go take a look at him just real quick here. He's got like this crazy thing he was doing with the driver where he was like lifting his foot, like when he tries to gain distance with the driver. And maybe that's what happened. Maybe he went and chased distance. I don't know. But it's just spooky to watch him hit the tee ball at times. You see him play a Corn Ferry event there. There's the Puerto Rico, the Phoenix Open. Not a bad showing there, which you can make an argument. That it's a comparable course. There's Shriners. What I wanted to go do is just see what kind of form. So it's funny, and he showed up at the PGA. So he had this little stint. Where was that PGA at? Bethpage. Wow, that's a tough track too. Sorry, I want to go back to that real quick. Chinnis and Arnold Palmer. Those are tough tracks. Yeah, so he had a little better form. I just wanted to see what he was kind of doing leading up to like when I watched him for this little stint here. Like, it was just amazing how well he was, as you can see, striking the ball, gain 10 strokes with the putter. So that always helps. But he was still good tee to green. It wasn't like he just did it all with the putter. Yeah. It is the long shot. I told you it was 700 to 1 that he could win this thing. I'm not saying that's going to happen by any stretch of the imagination. But if you are trying to get a little unique with a build, you plug him in, that's going to open it up where you could put a Scotty and Jordan together, no problem, and maybe even throw another 9,000 in there. So anyways, that's it from a picks perspective. I wanted to kind of get you guys that. Let me summarize this for you guys. So at the 10,000 range, leading off, I'm going to go with Jordan Spieth over Scotty and Terrell Hatton. I'm going to go with that. Go with the Texan. I like Hideki. Like I told you, not typically, he has gained a stroke whenever he plays in Texas on putter. It's just kind of unique. So with that said, we'll see if that holds true. Again, at the Valero, let's go see this real quick. Let me see if he actually gained at the Valero. Yeah, a 0.1. I mean, that's pretty weak, but let's do something else a little quick. Let me just click on his best finishes. Waste management to here. There's the Houston Open, 4.5. And it could be a total quinkity. There's the Byron Nelson 1.7. Anyway, sorry, we just went down a rabbit hole I did not need to go down. Anyways, I like Hideki. Kuchar, again, going with guys that have done very well. And it's kind of funny. I know I showed that stat thing with these guys. That's not the only reason why, but yeah, I like guys that got good feelings in Texas and have shown in the past. Tom Hoagie, give me Minwood Lee. That's probably a little, I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit off the cuff, but I think I'm hoping again to zig when people are zagging. Yeager, Bramlett, Will Gordon, Brandon Wu, Scott Stallings, Sam Stevens, Michael Kim, Eric Cole, Dylan Wu, Cam Champ, Mark Hubbard, Jimmy Walker, Eric Van Rooyen, Austin Smotherman, Trey Mullenix, Scott Piercy, James Hahn, Kevin Roy, and Sung Kang. I took Brent Grant off, so we got 24 guys I picked. Again, Sung Kang, just crazy shot in the dark, change it up. Probably where I'll be ending a lot of my bills would probably be around Trey Mullenix, like 7,000. But like I said, if I want to get a couple unique ones in there, I'll plug it in. So let's go jump out and wrap this thing up. Okay, with that said, as always, thank you for the time. I hope you've learned a little more and have some ideas that you want to play from a DFS side or even some betting ideas. If you do me the honor, click that like button, share this with anybody else that you know is maybe getting into DFS golf or betting side or just really want some real entertaining watch. And if you've not subscribed, please click that subscribe button. Again, I appreciate it greatly. I am getting close to 2,000 subscribers. Kind of a big deal considering I'd never even show myself. Just give you guys the information. And as always, if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at DFS Golf Guru, where I tweet anything out that you need to know come from the PGA or any funny anecdotes or just anything that's going on during the tournament that I find interesting. Like yesterday, I tweeted out that Adam Svensson, which of course I had in Showdown, decided to take a 7 on, I believe it was 17, the par 3, went nuts hitting the ball in the water, and that kind of crushed me. So with all that said, thanks guys. Best of luck to us at the AT&T Byron Nelson. Again, I will probably do an ownership or before the lock show because I'll want to show you ownership projections. We'll check the weather again. The presser schedule looks pretty light, so I don't know how much that'll be. We'll get the gleam from any of that. But anything I think of or see before then, I'll get it to you guys on Wednesday. With all that said, I will talk to you then. Take care.